And welcome into this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Buffalo Sabres podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers and Locked On Buffalo Sabres your first listen of the day. For everyone on the Buffalo Sabres feed, let me introduce myself. My name is Armando Velez, the host of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. And you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. And thankful to be doing a crossover edition of this show with the host of Locked On Sabres, Joe DiBiase. Joe, it's great to get together again for another crossover.
What's up, buddy? We've had both our teams play within 24 hours of each other. That's rare. Probably
Yeah,
isn't it? Maybe never happened. I don't know.
not to my knowledge. And it's funny because yesterday, when it was halftime, and I was just noticing the schedule with both of these teams, both of these games taking place in Western New York, I was thinking, you know what? Regardless of result, I wanted to uh, set up a crossover and maybe talk a little bit of
Sure.
football and talk a little bit about, of course, the hockey game as well, which is what our podcast is about. And yeah, let's start a little bit with the football side of things. I mean, of course, the Miami Dolphins having their third string quarterback in Skylar Thompson, still having a chance to win.
Yeah.
What really cost the Dolphins for me is really all the drop passes early and getting behind the eight ball. And it's crazy,
Yeah.
even with all of that, they had a lead, and also play clock mismanagement for the Dolphins.
Oh,
They,
yeah.
they got to the
Whew.
line of scrimmage very late and had to like really burn their timeouts, and it really cost them that game.
The delay a game at on their last drive to go to 4th and 6 instead of 4th and 1. I don't know what was happening there. I saw Mike McDaniel, the Dolphins coach, after talk about it a little bit. So we don't communication errors. He talked about on that specific play, the 4th and 1, that the refs originally had marked it a first down, changed it to a 4th down. So they had a 1st and 10 play in, had to change everything to go to a 4th and 1. So that played into it. But their mistakes beforehand caused them to have no timeouts, and then they weren't able to call a timeout. So that was crazy to see some of that clock management along the way. But yeah, Buffalo is as annoyed at a playoff win as humanly possible, as much as I've ever seen, just because of the expectations and the spread that you saw going into that game, and just the mistakes. Because the Bills are a better football team. They outgained them 2 to
Yes.
1. It was like 450 to 200, and this team makes mistakes. And it was, I think, a warning shot. That you got away with it by the skin of your teeth against that Dolphins team without Tua, or else that wouldn't have happened. You can't put that game on the field against Cincinnati, or the Bills' season will end on Sunday.
Yeah, and I was expecting this to be a not close game for Miami,
Mm-hmm.
and
It looked
and
that way too, right? It was 17-0.
yeah, I thought it was great while it lasted. On to next season, and
Yeah.
the defense. Even though I think the defensive coordinator is likely going to go, and the special teams coordinator, they stepped up when they needed to, and
Yep.
made it a game. Especially that Xavier Howard interception, uh,
Yep.
which was a deep ball to the which he took it like 40 yards, 35, 40
Yeah.
yards, something like that. But hey, found a way to win. Uh, not necessarily not and not necessarily cheering for Buffalo the rest of the way, obviously, but
Mm-hmm.
also the moment that I heard that Damar Hamlin visited the team the day before, it
Yeah.
was just a shot of I can only imagine the shot of inspiration that just put place on the Bills.
Oh yeah, they're playing with a fire under their butts for him right now, and like emotionally, they're charged. I mean, they still make mistakes. Sometimes that actually maybe even hurts them. Like Josh Allen wanting to do it all on one play, these bombs down the field over and over. That is him. So you just have to kind of live with that, because sometimes it goes great and you win by 50. Other times it goes poorly and you let a team into a game that shouldn't be in it. But um, they're all emotionally charged right now. Hamlin's recovery also. I don't know about you. I did not know that much about like cardiac arrest recovery periods and whatnot. The idea that within a week he was flying home and then at team facilities like 10 days later is still incredible to me. Again, coming from someone that really did not have any prior knowledge of like what the recovery timeline was like for someone that had cardiac arrest.
Yeah, and this is why we try not to play doctors on social media when it comes to cardiac arrest with Damar Hamlin, of course, concussions with Tua, who Might have had two, maybe three, based on everything that happened in week 3 to week 4 as well. But
Mm,
that's why we just trust what they say and their judgment. And of course, we're still learning about these things in sports. But let's transition on to the game that happened this afternoon on MLK Day, a 1 p.m. Start for both the Buffalo Sabres and the Florida Panthers. 1-1 that the South Florida and Buffalo split in these last 24 hours,
hmm
and a surprise call up for Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, of course, a very highly ranked goalie prospect for the Buffalo Sabres in their
Yeah.
system. And what do you make of that surprise call up
Well,
this morning?
it wasn't. It actually wasn't really much of a surprise. They've been doing some roster gymnastics over the past couple of days because they've had three goaltenders. Craig Anderson and Eric Comrie are on one-way contracts, and Anderson has been good. I think Craig Anderson has been every bit what they have hoped for the Sabres, but he really only plays once a week at this point. I mean, he's 42. I think 42.
Yeah.
He's the oldest goalie in hockey. Comrie is the one that really has not been performing up to standard. So they've been really starting Luukkonen. Like Luukkonen has played 3 games in a row for them. He has played 7 of their last 10. So he is their starting goaltender, and he has been really for like the last month of the season. They're doing like paper transactions up and down because they've got one more guy on the team than they really want to have. So
Mhm.
it's just like there's money stuff to it. When you see like tomorrow, you might see Luukkonen get sent down. Don't read anything into that. He won't actually go to Rochester. It'll just be official transaction. He might start the next. Well, he won't start tomorrow, but he might start on Thursday. He's been great, and I should maybe put great into context. He's been better than the comparison, better than the alternative, because this team has been starving for goaltending, and he's had a bit of a run here. He's been had a bit of a run where 7 starts. All right, he looks like a competent NHL goaltender. He's not quite yet at stardom level or thinking he could be a franchise goalie yet. He's still very young, 23 years old, but I've been impressed. He is big. He moves around really well for his size, acrobatic saves. He's definitely got stuff to clean up. Don't get me wrong. Like rebound control can be all over the place at times. Some of this positional stuff. He's very raw. And at 23, that's normal. You're probably dealing with a little of that with Spencer Knight. Maybe not as much because Knight's more polished at this point. But yeah, I'm impressed with him right now, and I might not see an end in sight. He might really take over their net the rest of the way.
Mhm. Yeah, and I don't really necessarily to pin today's loss for Buffalo on Okopeka Lukanen,
Yeah,
and really this game for the Buffalo Sabres. And I spoke about on this morning's podcast for myself about the the speed that Buffalo
yeah,
has. And of course we've seen the coming out party of Tage Thompson last season, of course, carrying it over to this season, being paid, still making 1.4 million before his contract hits next season at just north over 7. And
yep,
really, for the story of this game was the Florida Panthers just taking away the speed of the Buffalo Sabres, especially through the neutral zone. Every time they even enter the
yeah.
Panther zone, there was already a stick ready there, and the gap control for the Panthers had just been was playing so well. What did you see for Buffalo on that end?
I thought it was a lot of that frustrated the Sabres the way Florida was clogging the neutral zone, and that is a little bit of the blueprint against them. The Sabres like to trade chances up and down with good teams. Like when they play Toronto, it's fireworks every time because it's just up and down the ice, speed, skill, and they're gonna right now in their form at the moment. They're the youngest team in hockey. They're not going to win that game with Toronto more times than not. If they play that team 10 times, they might lose 6 of them. They might lose 7 of them. They really don't like playing in these slugfest type games. They just faced one. They just faced a team. Who the hell did they play the other night? The Kings happened a little bit earlier in the season. For 2 periods, they got them, and then the Sabres finally got going in the third. Kellen Timer. Who the hell? I can't remember who they played their last game. The Jets. Winnipeg with Connor Hellebuck did the same thing Florida did in this game on Martin Luther King Day. Just take away their speed, frustrate them through the neutral zone, focus on Tage Thompson, don't let him get going. And the Sabres don't have a lot of alternatives to it because at that point, Now it comes down to goaltending. Now it comes down to defense. And the Sabres' weak points right now are those two areas of the ice. So I thought if that was Florida's game plan, or if they just kind of fell into it, that is the blueprint, I think, to beat the Sabres team right now.
Yeah, and definitely a different type of game that the Florida Panthers played, used to, other than what they've been used to playing. And we're gonna be discussing that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Buffalo Sabres. But first, we're gonna tell you all about Bet Online. And betonline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get all the latest odds trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and World Cup. We've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you'll find these at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. Back on this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Buffalo Sabres podcast. I'm Armando Velez. I got Joe DiBiase of Locked On Sabres on the show today. And really, Joe,
Mm-hmm.
multiple times when of course with the Florida Panthers scoring chances, it's mostly been when the experienced guys face up against the younger guys. And
Yep.
first goal, lots of credit to Sam Bennett. He pins Owen Power to the end boards, and then the puck ends up in Matthew Tkachuk's stick. And
Yeah.
Matthew Tkachuk been raving about it all season, how he's the guy who leads the NHL in passes from behind the net. And of course, just with a lot of white jerseys in front of the net, the buck bounces, and then Brandon Montour, former Buffalo Sabre, finds the
Yep.
back of the net for this one, where Brandon Montour has 6 points in 6 games against Buffalo. And then the third goal for the Florida Panthers, which was Tage Thompson trying to skate through 4 Florida Panthers players, and
Yep.
Barkov strips them from there. And then Anton Lundell and Sam Reinhart are off to the races. And then Lundell beats Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen for that third goal of the game. And I saw multiple times that it was the veterans for the Florida Panthers
Mm-hmm.
versus the young guys. And even though their career trajectory, I mean, Owen Power's only in his second season in the NHL. I saw
Mm-hmm.
that those guys, when faced off against them, that they were pinning them. Their sticks were active,
Yeah.
and they were great at puck separation, especially Radko Gudas. Radko Gudas, as far as on the defensive side, even though he didn't get a point, on the defensive side, him and Mahura, that pair only allowed 4 shots on goal the whole game.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wow. And it feels like this is a team the Sabres would like to play against, just because of the veterans they've got, both the Stalls and Gudas. Gudas skates well for his size, so he's not maybe the best example of that. But I was surprised Florida didn't want to trade up and down with the Sabres. And that's fine. Like, they got their chances and they still ended up with 33 shots on the night. So it's not like, it's not like they were playing 2000 Devils hockey where they're playing the trap and getting 18 shots on goal. But I was a little surprised at the way this game script went, and that worked against Tage Thompson especially. I thought stifling Thompson, he to me did not have a good game at all. That was the first time I've seen Don Granato break up that top line of Thompson, Skinner, and Tuck in a month, 2 months. Like, it's been a very long time since, even for a period, he split those guys up, and he did that in this game. So that was going well for them. And also, I I think the Sabres were just preoccupied with Matthew Tkachuk. And that's 2 games in a row now that they have done that. And listen, like, part of it, I think, is a galvanizing thing for this team to kind of have a villain like that. Because this Sabres team, like, the last time they were good 10 years ago, it all got broken down because Milan Lucic ran their goalie once upon a time and nobody stuck up for Ryan Miller. Like, the whole team blew up after that happened because they knew that core was not together. And then they haven't been good since. Like, I don't want to stick it all in that one moment, but that happened. And Sabre fans watched these 2 games against the Panthers, and Tkachuk trying to bully his way around, through, which he often does because that's the style of game he plays. And, even Cousins taking a 2-minute penalty there. Like, I don't think the Sabres and Sabre fans are upset at that, or at the end of last game when they were going at him, because the 2 Florida games, I think fans look at and think, okay, this unit is together. This team is together. They do not back down. And that's something. That doesn't mean you're going to be good. It doesn't mean you're going to make the playoffs. It's just, it's a nice little thing to have in your back pocket. Scoring goals and actually creating chances is obviously more important, and that did not happen in this game.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that about being together. And Matthew Tkachuk right now is on a 7-game point streak for the Panthers.
He's
The
incredible.
Listen to this: the Florida Panthers, when Matthew Tkachuk has a multi-point game, are now 14-1-3
Wow.
when that happens. And also, this game was also about the defense as well. The forwards were also supporting the defense. That every time a lot of times when the Buffalo Sabres were entering the zone,
Mhm.
the forwards were there to back check. So there's not putting also as much pressure. And with that goal by Brandon Montour,
Yeah.
the the Panthers defense, as far as goals, they're tied for first in the NHL in goals with the Carolina Hurricanes, and fourth in points
Yep.
in the NHL. Of course, there's still the defensive issues for the Panthers, especially on their end. And this was, like I said, a different type of game that the Florida Panthers played, because they've been relying on their power play as of late. They've been the second best power play since we returned from the Christmas break. And the last time they faced, the Panthers had 2 power play goals against the Sabres, but that was only 2 out of 4 in
Yeah.
the whole month of October. They went 4 for 41 in that month. 2 of them came against the Sabres. And
Wow.
and the Panthers power play at that time was just abysmal overall. And this was
Mhm.
it was great to not have a game for the Panthers that it was just them relying on the extra man.
Yeah. I'm impressed by the Panthers. I mean, this is only a 1-game sample, but they were the better team in this game. They controlled a lot of the possession. I was actually surprised that the shot attempts actually came out the same, at least at 5-on-5. They were 44 apiece, because it felt like it was more heavily weighted towards the Panthers in that regard. But the Sabres also did pour it on a little bit late. Panthers knew they had the game, so that kind of can, I think, inflate the stats a little bit. Sabres now by 3 at one point, so Florida's not pushing the envelope as much at that point. So I thought first 2 periods especially, Florida kind of showed off their talent a little bit. And Kachuk, especially, man, like his playmaking ability and his ability to finish as well. I know he's going to score a goal in this game, but just always being around the net, creating chances. It's incredible to me. I'm sure you've talked about it a million times throughout the season. It is incredible to me that it appears they won that trade with Calgary in the offseason, and yet the team results have kind of not been there.
Yeah, it's frustrating, but now the Panthers have won 5 of their last 7, which is
Yep.
now their best stretch of the season. And this statement, what I'm about to say, might trigger Panther fans on my end, because
Hmm.
we've heard Paul Maurice speak about playoff style hockey for the Panthers, but this was the type of game for really the first, not the first time this season. There've been stretches, but for the first time in like a while for the Panthers, that they've played uh that type of game for the Panthers. And also another trade for the Panthers. It's still not set in stone whether they won the Reinhart trade still, because
Mm-hmm.
even though Reinhart has 9 points in 6 games for the Panthers against the Sabres there, like, I also realized that Yuri Kulich had such a great World Juniors, and that was the pick that the
Yeah.
Sabres got from
Yeah.
Florida. And of course, Devin Levi, someone that performed well in the World Juniors just 2 years ago too. and
Yeah.
and also for the Panthers as well. Like I said, not relying on the power play, but also their third periods. Their third period, their goal differential in the third period is minus 19,
Ooh,
and they've
that's
gone
brutal.
stretches of 10 minutes sometimes without a shot on goal, or a very few, like 2 or
Mm-hmm.
3, going back to their game against Dallas last Sunday. But one of their shots ended up in a goal. That was the Tage Thompson strip from Barkov, and the 2-on-1 from Lundell and Reinhardt. But for me, this was not the game to nitpick for on my end, because this was a game that was already put away, versus other
Yep.
times.
Right. Right.
Vegas, they had a 1-goal lead and they let it slip. Vancouver, they had a 2-goal lead and they got it down to 1. Even Colorado, they were up 3-0 and it ended up being tied at one point. This for me was not the game to nitpick, because I never felt it was out of hand.
Yeah. No, I agree. I wouldn't be nitpicking the way they played in the third period. Sabres were buzzing around, but again, you play the prevent defense, you're up 3 goals. You kind of let them have the puck along the wall, kills time. So the hot streak as of late, Reinhardt playing better. I mean, I just think there's too much talent on this Panthers team for them to not get in the postseason. It's going to be tough. That Islanders spot right now, I don't think the Islanders get in. I think it's going to be between Pittsburgh and Florida. I think there's too much talent there. I think Sabres might hang around just to be in the race. I don't think they can realistically get in, though. It'll be, I shouldn't say that. We'll see. They can go on a torrid streak. They've already done that twice this year. But my guess is, just looking at the season overall and watching all these teams in the Eastern Conference, I think the Islanders drop off. Sabres hang around but don't get in, and it comes down to Pittsburgh or Florida for that last spot.
And the Panthers have a head-to-head against the Pittsburgh Penguins next Tuesday as well. So that
Yeah.
one is a real that one's going to be one to really circle around the schedule for the Panthers. But in segment number 3, we're going to talk about what's coming up and what to anticipate for the Sabres and the Panthers the rest of the rest of the month in January. But Joe, tell us
Yeah.
all about Athletic Greens.
Yeah, before we do that, let's tell you about Athletic Greens. AG1, I use this stuff every day. I have the little droplets. I put 1 drop in my water every day. Don't even notice that it's there, and I'm getting all those healthy vitamins and minerals that you need. Also, AG1 shakes are great as well. They taste great. They're easy to make. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. I've been keto over the last year or so. It fits with my diet as well. It supports better sleep quality. And as someone that wakes up at 4:30 in the morning to do my radio job, I know how important that is. Supports mental clarity and alertness. It's the one thing it's got all the best things Athletic Greens. With all the vitamins, vitamin D, adaptogens, probiotics, and more. Athletic Greens has over 7,000 5-star reviews. It's recommended by professional athletes, trusted by leading health experts as well. Right now, Athletic Greens is going to make it easy for you. Go to their website, athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. They're going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network, athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
Third and final segment here on this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Sabres. I'm Armando Velez. I got Joe DiBiase of Locked On Sabres and the pregame host on the Buffalo Bills radio network, which is, of course, why we spoke about a little bit of football in the first segment for
Yep.
us too. And, of course, my experience in doing Dolphins writing for dolphinstalk.com. Might have an article in the coming days about what to do, especially at the quarterback position. We might have a little bit of a discussion about that. But Joe,
Interesting.
for the Panthers, this
Yeah.
right here for them is really the beginning of just their biggest stretch of the season. 8 games in 13 days with 3 back-to-backs in them. They got 4 out of 8 points recently on their last road trip where they played in 4 time zones, which is so difficult to do. Very little practice time, and of course, they're going to get very little practice time for them as they have a back-to-back. Where tomorrow they'll be in Toronto. It's a very short trip. Of course, the Sabres have a back-to-back as well, as they will be going to Chicago tomorrow.
Yep.
But I said because of the game, especially because of the games in hand that Buffalo has on Florida. And of course, I know you said that they'll be sticking around, but I felt coming into this that this was the most important game for the Florida Panthers on this road trip because
Mhm.
I don't think they're gonna get into the top 3 now in the Atlantic Division, catching Toronto.
Oh yeah, no,
So
that's gonna be really tough. I mean, who would you, Toronto or Tampa? I mean, that's well, I guess what are they? They're 9 back of Tampa, and Tampa's played 4 more games. This is tough. That's just tough math. I don't want to say Florida's not capable of going on a run like they would need to, but they'd probably have to be the best team in hockey the rest of the way to catch Tampa. Would just be
yeah,
my guess by how that math works.
yeah, and honestly, I've been very up and down of how I looked at the standings for
Mm,
myself because the Panthers, they still haven't gone on a 3-game winning streak all of this season. And it's
Wow.
funny, the Chicago Blackhawks have had 2 3-game winning streaks, and they're the
Oof.
second worst team
Yeah.
in the National Hockey League. And it's crazy to think that the Panthers have won 5 of 7 in their best stretch of the season. You would think that there'll be some type
Hmm.
of winning streak there, but it still hasn't happened. Of course, if they win tomorrow against the Leafs
Hmm.
at Scotiabank Arena, and we don't know if Spencer Knight is going to play. Right now, he's on injured reserve. They might put Sergei Bobrovsky back-to-back games, and this wouldn't be the
Hmm.
first time this season that they've done it for him. As Alex Lyon, of course, won a Calder championship with the Chicago Wolves last season, but he still hasn't had any starts for the Panthers. So I'm not going to put a guess on who the starting goalie is, but Spencer Knight is eligible to come back off injured reserve. So I'm right now, for me, from a Panthers perspective, I'm just looking at trying to get some wins in a row and not
Hmm.
necessarily doing too much scoreboard watching. Yeah, the Penguins play the Ducks tonight. I'm not expecting the Ducks to go into PPG Paints Arena
Nope.
to get a win against Pittsburgh.
Yeah. And for the Sabres coming up, I think this is a real opportunity for them. They've got it's tough because their schedule is easing up in terms of opponent, but because of the devastating blizzard that happened here, it's right before Christmas, or actually it's on Christmas. They had 2 games postponed, and they are really making those games up right now. The Sabres 4 weeks in a row are going Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and then again 2 more times. They are packed in terms of scheduling this month. So it's gonna. This is hey, if any team can do it, it might be this team to make it through this month, playing at least half decent hockey because they are the youngest team in hockey by a wide margin. So fresh legs, young legs, keep the roster going or interchanged guys in and out. It's going to be a challenge here, but as I said, the schedule kind of eases up in terms of opponent. Chicago tomorrow night is a game you should win. The Islanders are above the Sabres in the standings. I think the Sabres are a better team than the Islanders, though. I think the Islanders are paper tigers. I think they're going to drop back to the pack. The Ducks, then after that, they got to be the worst team in hockey, right? So
Mhm.
Chicago and Anaheim might be the 2 worst teams in hockey. They're 2 of your next 3 games. Dallas is tough, so you got a Dallas game mixed in there. And then the Blues, who haven't had the season that they've wanted either. So this is an opportunity here against some West Coast teams that are near the bottom of the standings. It's getting a little tricky though. The Sabres have dropped 4 of 5 after a very lengthy winning streak. So that's kind of evened out itself. They're hanging around. The games in hand is still there. But again, as these games are so packed in, by the end of the month, they're not going to really have games in hand on teams. So they're going to have to get those points banked into the standings this month. And I think that would really determine how close, how realistic of a playoff chase they're going to be in. Right now, they're 5 points back with 2 games in hand. Theoretically, you win both games. I know it's easier said than done, but you win both games, you're 1 point out. And that's not mentioning Florida or Pittsburgh, but that sounds like a race. That sounds like a race. And for me, it's just keep pace. Don't lose the pack. There have been plenty of seasons where they've looked like, okay, we might actually be in this thing. But just give us scoreboard watching in March. And then they've just fallen off the cliff and we're at 15 points out by the time you hit the trade deadline. Just hanging around. You're the youngest team in hockey. You're not expected to make it, but for God's sakes, give these fans a race to care about. And I think this month will really determine, these next 5, 6 games will determine how realistic a chase we're really going to be looking at.
Yeah, and geographically, also for the Sabres, because of where they're located, and just based on the rest of January, you're not
Yeah.
traveling far to go to your games neither. I mean, Chicago's like maybe like a 1.5 to 2 hour flight from Buffalo.
Yep.
You have a matinee game on Saturday, and then of course Dallas and St. Louis back to back, that's a quick trip as well. And then Winnipeg and Minnesota are right there as well. So not only is this team fresh as in age, but also travel for them
Hmm.
as well. So this might not be too much mileage on the Sabres as well with their schedule coming up. But of course, Winnipeg is Winnipeg. Of course, they have Rick Bowness there, where Paul Maurice's former team, and now they're towards the top of the Western Conference there as well.
Is that a thing? Is anyone mentioning that? I'm not saying it's Paul Maurice's fault by any means, but it is a little curious that Paul Maurice leaves one team and they're first place in the West, and he goes to another team and they go from President's Trophy to out of the playoff picture. Again, I'm not putting that on Maurice. I'm not watching their
Yeah.
games close enough to know if that's a thing, but it's either coincidental or maybe there's something there. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, from the Florida Panthers perspective, and of course, when you go to President's Trophy, and of course, with the cap issues that the Florida Panthers have with Keith Yandel and the inability to keep a Giroux and Marchment due to the cap as well,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I think that's part of the issue as well. But then there's still a little bit of the issue with Paul Maurice just waiting a little bit to make some adjustments as well, and the coaching hasn't been perfect for the Panthers. I'm not on the fire Maurice train. A lot of Panther fans online are,
Really?
uh,
Wow.
but it's just crazy how a little bit of a jolt when it comes to a new
Yeah.
coach and a new voice, and of course Josh Morrissey is up there in the Norris conversation along with Rasmus Dahlin
Yep.
and with Eric Carlson as well. So crazy to think that when one coach leaves,
Yeah.
another the team that he leaves improves.
Yeah. Yeah, it might be a coincidence. It might be something there. Rick Bonus is not some innovative thinker by any means. So it's not like he's come in there and like changed every little thing that they're doing. I mean, he was the coach of the Jets in like the 80s. That's insane. Like I can't even. Who would the Sabres coach been in the 80s? It'd be like if well, I guess it would have been Scotty Bowman. It'd be like if Scotty Bowman came back. That might be a little different. But it's just insane to me that like a coach could leave an organization, have a 30-year career doing other things, and then wind up back in that team. But yeah, listen, coaching a lot of times comes down to goaltending. That's the way I look at it. A lot of times, you can look this up. Go back in the last 15, 20 Jack Adams winners and look at their save percentages for each team. Like they're getting insanely good goaltending, which is very hard to control if you're the head coach. It just kind of happens. And that's happening right now in Winnipeg. That's not, I don't know how we got on the Jets here. I guess I got on the Jets here. But I look at them and think that coach is in the running right now for coach of the year. And I think their whole team right now is Connor Hellebuck is the best goalie in the world. That's it.
Mm,
Like Morrissey's great and they've got some good pieces up front. But in large part, they're the same roster they've always been. The difference is this year, Connor Hellebuck is playing at an insane level. I think he's the best goalie in hockey. And, in Florida right now, like, listen, if you're not getting saves, that's, I think, a lot of times when the coach criticism comes in, when they really, it's kind of misguided criticism.
mm. And thankfully, Sergei Bobrovsky has been well since December 1,
Yep.
posting just over a 920 save percentage. For today's game, single save percentage, it was 969 for Bobrovsky, and they really did a good job of definitely protecting him. Of course, don't know if he necessarily saw that goal by Alex Tuck. Don't know if he was screened there
Mm-hmm.
as well. But hey, overall, a great performance, and he's had to step up when taking most of the load. Of course, with Spencer Knight having a non-COVID illness last month, and now he on injured reserve for the Panthers. Who knows
Yeah.
if he's be activated tomorrow? But hey, Bobrovsky has been a lot better, and I said it on Twitter, and I'm gonna say it here. Put some respect on the $10 million man. So,
Yeah. And I'm
but
watching it back right now. Like Darlene is screening him. Um, he's not completely absolvent of criticism there because he's just not hugging the post like he should be for a bad angle shot like that. But I wouldn't put all of the blame on him because yeah, Darlene is standing right in front of him when that
mhm,
shot comes through.
yeah, so yeah, great performance regardless from Sergei Bobrovsky, and of course the defense right in front of him. But Joe, I want to say thank you so much for doing this crossover
Yeah, thank you
edition
to you
of the
too.
Locked On Florida Panthers podcast with myself. Tell everybody where they can find you and your work and what you do online.
Yeah, so you can check me out on Twitter. I'm at Sneaky Joe Sports. You can follow the Locked On Sabres podcast anywhere you're listening to Locked On Panthers. So easiest way, if you want to check us out on YouTube, just go to YouTube, type in Locked On Sabres. It'll come right up. Otherwise, you can check us out on Twitter at Locked On Sabres there as well. Lots of football tweets, lots of all sports tweets. So if you're coming for Sabres, you're going to get some other stuff too. Just a heads up for everybody out there.
Yeah, especially since this is a South Florida show. I don't know how much they'll like the Bills talk, especially now losing to them. But for everyone on the Locked On
Who are
Sabres
they
feed,
rooting for? Who they got to be rooting for? Somebody. They probably shouldn't be rooting for the Bills, division
yeah,
rival, but they do have to pick somebody, right?
yeah, they do. I mean, Jacksonville is not a division rival, so I mean, so
I've
maybe
been all
maybe
over the Jags all year. I like that. I like that.
maybe keep it in Florida. Who knows? So, but for everyone on the Sabres feed, you can follow me on Twitter at Monoman12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers, and you're gonna see some Panthers tweets along with some Miami Dolphins tweets here and there, and just questions about their offseason, especially where they're going to be in salary cap hell, just like how the Panthers are this season, come next season for them. But Joe, thank you so much, and I will see you on the next crossover.
Thanks, Armando. See you then.